Good evening and welcome to the September meeting of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners. I'm Commissioner Jamison. Those of you who would like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please do so. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is to review and approve the minutes from our last meeting.
So move.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, call a vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The matter passes 5-0. And we are going to take out of order one of our issues here.
083.
Yes, go ahead.
I presume it's for both sets of minutes.
Yes.
Oh, that's right, that's right. It was for both. So, yeah. So item 083, authorization to contact, is that right?
Yes.
Town of Cumberland for assistance administration?
No, it's the general obligation bonds, I believe.
Right. Manager Gailey.
Thank you. This item is coming forth on behalf of staff. As the commissioners are aware, when we work through the budget process for the 23-24 budget year, we had proposed a general obligation bond to be floated. And this evening, we are seeking authorization, formal authorization from the county commissioners to move forward with selling that bond so that we can move forward with a number of projects down at the jail complex, as well as a small project here in our parking garage at the courthouse. Alex, as you can see, is in remote. He is at a conference, but we felt as though it would be important if the commissioners had any questions on this general obligation bond. Alex has been the point person for it, and so I will stop there and ask Alex if he has anything to add to my presentation.
Alex.
Nothing much to add. This is actually a pretty straightforward bond issuance, almost all of it related to go out this fall. There is an order, the bond order which is attached. We definitely need a motion to continue forward then with that. We'll be doing calls with the rating agency this Friday. So the dollar amount on this is a little on the large side. It's a pretty small listing of items, the jail, the door lock replacements, the roof replacements start on that. A range of parking garage repairs, and so on.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Move passage.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve this matter. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those, yes, Alex.
Can I ask that the order as written be approved?
There is an order in your packet
Oh,
that would be important to, you can say just as written.
Yeah, that was the intention of my
reference it.
motion. Yep.
Authorizing the county commissioners as written, essentially, or the order of the county commissioners authorizing this bond issuance as written.
Do I have an amendment to the motion?
I accept that amendment.
Is
Sure.
there a second to the amendment? We first need to vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Amendment carries 5-0. And now the overall passage of the item. No further discussion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Matter carries 5-0. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
And we have a informational report this evening, Cumberland County Jail Board of Visitors Inspection. Manager Gailey.
I'd like to pass this off and invite Sheriff Joyce up to the mic to introduce this.
Hopefully this is on. Thank you. Annually, we've had a jail board of visitors for about 13 years now. Currently, Colleen Hilton, who's the chair, has been on. She's the longest presiding member on the jail board of visitors. Probably because we pay her a lot. But annually, as of recently, it's required that the jail board of visitors come in, take a tour of the jail. They have unfettered access anyway, and then provide a report at the end of the year. We're a little bit behind in the fact that we were trying to revamp it and make corrections and stuff and get it accurate. So Ms. Colleen Hilton, the chair of the jail board of visitors, will provide you with the annual report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having us. Sheriff introduced me, and I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the jail board of visitors. And some of our members are going to be here, and they've got me with flies. It's a nice day out for Utah. But you have in your annual report the makeup of our visitors, so I won't go on to that detail. But we have really good experience on the board with folks with some experience in corrections, folks with substance abuse, attorneys, and a number of other important factors for the jail. As the sheriff said, per the statute, we are required to examine and inspect the jail, which is kind of a little way to put it when we're on our hands and knees inspecting the jail. But what we are doing is we're touring whenever we want, whenever we have meetings, and most of our information comes to us by way of interviewing some of the residents, inmates, but so interviewing residents, interviewing staff, interviewing folks that work with all of them in jail. And of course, the last 2 or 3 years has been an incredibly difficult time for everybody, especially the jail, with various public health outbreaks that have been managed, and whether it's an outbreak with the residents or the staff, it's been a really tough 3 years. But when, I think when we met last, which was by Zoom, you understand, the jail typically has served 400 residents, but in the past few years, the average daily population has been less. It's about 264 as of this past year. And additionally, like all industries in our state, access to workforce is really challenging. And so we have historically been quite low and down in correction officer vacancies. So at the end of 22, we were down to 77 officers, which is tough. And lots of work has gone into collaborate with our law enforcement to manage the population that we serve. I'll sort of highlight from the last report some of the recommendations that the Board of Visitors made and has done. The electronic medical record for the medical and some of the residents that we're serving are really significant in medical care. We have someone right now who's running about $12,000 a month just in medications. So they do a great job, the medical service, Armor Health, and they wanted to transition from Correct Tech to Core Solutions, which is a new upgrade for electronic records, and that will be implemented this fall. We've also 2 re-entry positions, which is intensive care managers funded by DHHS, and they report to DHHS, but they work to help with transitions as folks are leaving the jail for housing, substance abuse, you name it. They do a lot of care management to see hopefully a return to the jail. We've done a lot of work, which the sheriff could go into more detail on, with the Department of Corrections to move sentenced individuals to the correct premise to avoid some of the stays that we have to manage due to the staffing shortages. So if they come from the main correctional center, we want them returned to the main correctional center. Programs, there's been lots of talk about medication-assisted treatment for substance abuse, and we currently have a lot of clients who have not previously been on medication-assisted treatment, but we can now get them started when they get entry into the jail, and we're averaging anywhere from 78 to 87 participants in the treatment program. If it gets much higher, we may need to add staff, but for right now, we're managing it just fine. Some of the Some of the suggestions from some of our interviews have been to improve the grievance policy from the residents of the jail, but in further conversations with, depends who you're talking to, they say it's actually working just fine. Costello, the captain of operations and security, does a really good job and reports to us very And then during COVID, a lot of the programs obviously were put on hold because we couldn't access, and we are happy to report that we have resumed religious services, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, GED training, on and on and on. So back in full force. And then finally, our board is recommending for the coming year, if possible, and we talked to the sheriff about this, is just adding a mental health counselor, because the behavioral health staff is incredibly busy. You can imagine the folks that are coming in have significant mental health issues and need support. And then there's been some question about getting a little bit more flexibility with revisiting the time and date indications are passed. And these are just sometimes the concerns that come forth from the inmates that we need to just work through. And always, I would say, from the board, our concerns that are raised are always responded to and certainly taken into consideration and acted upon whenever possible. Happy to take any questions, or if there's anything specific, although sheriff can help me here.
Any questions for Colleen? Yes, go ahead.
When you mentioned the mental health counselor, are you looking at a full-time staff member or a volunteer or just
Preferably full-time staff, preferably, but we certainly work with the community resources that do access the jail as well. Sheriff, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think it was through Armor, because some of the people reported back that we're just kind of touching the tops of the waves.
yeah?
And quite frankly, I think some of the feds are gonna be wanting, I know ICE wants 24/7 mental health, and there's just no way we can provide that. So even with an additional person, we won't be able to provide it. But it's a work in progress.
Okay, but thank you.
You know, I should have mentioned in the report is we did have 3 suicides in the past year. All were independently examined and appropriately, obviously handled as part of the situation, but again, it speaks to the need of the folks that use the jail.
Commissioners, other questions? Colleen, do you have any sense of what full-time mental health counsel would cost? Budget-wise?
Yeah, I would say roughly 50,000. Probably more.
Okay.
depending on the licensure requirement.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any other questions, and we appreciate your presentation. Back to our consent, back to public comments. Do we have any comments from the public here this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Clarification, it's items 23077 through 23086, and not including 083, which we just passed earlier. Is that correct?
Can I will pull a couple of things out, only for clarification?
Sure. Which ones, Sue?
23078, the Naplesville contracts were for the sheriff's office, and 23079, and 23 is 080.
What was the last one? 80?
Yeah.
Okay, those three.
80.
Okay. Do we need an amendment to the consent agenda to approve those? So we will go forward with the approval of those other 3 items first, and then we'll go back to Sue's. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda on those 3 items, which would be 077, 081, 082, 084, 085, and 086. Is that correct? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The matter carries 5-0. And now we're going back to 078, Commissioner Watonis.
Well, the question I have, and it seems to be an ongoing always issue, is that some of these contracts are coming to us as after the fact. For example, is on, the Naples one, well, that was completely signed off by as all the parties on May the 2nd by the town manager, May the 3rd by the sheriff, and its filing will come to us in September. And, with the same with the other ones. So, well, my concern is, and I think we've talked about this in other meetings, is that we need, to relook these contracts. And I think that we're talking about them this fall. Well, but that I don't understand, if they've been signed off for by all the parties, with the town and the sheriff, where are they sitting for all these months? And why aren't they coming, to us? Can the contract will be carried out if it hasn't been signed off by the commissioner? I don't know, so.
Well, these certainly have.
Well, yeah. So my question is, or to whoever, where have they been? And this is, our September, and here we are, we're talking about, what contracts that have come and gone, so.
Sheriff
Short
Joyce.
answer is, I don't have a copy of it, but I can't tell you. I know these bounce around and they have to go in front of the town meeting, which sometimes is in June. So I know Naples was like in June, so if I signed off in May, it was in good faith that it would be voted on
Yeah.
and funded. But I know that they get bounced around, the captain's looking, Courtney's looking, so I don't have a definitive answer.
So once, with that, we'll clarify something. So once it's signed off by the town and by you, well, then it goes, back to captains? Or it goes back with a Courtney to do, the next step?
Well, so usually it's approved by the town manager.
Yeah,
Then I
Yeah.
get it,
yeah,
and then it's put with a position paper
Yeah.
and sent out.
okay, well, these three just came to us with this month.
It could have sat on somebody's desk.
Desk, yeah.
I can't tell you,
Okay.
so, without doing an investigation.
Yeah, so that concerns me, is this stuff not coming to us in a timely fashion, or, with the reason? I just thought this was kind of odd, especially with the Naples one and the Harrison one have come and gone,
Commissioner Cloutier, were you done, Sue? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, I'm done.
So, two questions. First is, after you sign and the town manager signs, do they have to be ratified by the town meeting?
Generally, they'll sign so that we can put somebody up there with the idea that the town meeting is gonna be the final stamp of approval. So
Right.
we're going out on a limb because we're assuming they're gonna sign. The town manager's going out on a limb, assuming that the town folk are gonna vote it in. So it kind of propels it. And then, when we had COVID, some of those town meetings got even pushed further ahead and handled differently. So,
Okay.
to say that it's a wheel out of balance, I would say it's a wheel out of balance.
So,
because-
my next question is, were these contracts all rollovers of previous contracts?
Yes, there's none that are new.
So that, these were the summer force contracts?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
summer is
the
pretty
Naples
much
one
over.
is. The Harrison is ongoing.
Yeah.
We have two that are yearly. And, but that, I would agree, the Naples one is come and gone because that ended Labor Day weekend. As well as Chebeague Island and Long Island. Those are our three summer, and Fry Island.
And we did get paid, I imagine.
I hope so.
Okay.
I hope so.
Alex is not here.
He's hiding out in Rockland.
Towns are pretty good at paying.
Yes,
That's all I
Commissioner
have.
Gordon.
Isn't this something where we ought to, the next time we go around, negotiating this contract. It's not only for the year that they're talking about, but for the year following. That
Was
way-
canceled?
Yeah, so it's.
Good idea.
It's possible, some have, I know one town manager in Standish wanted to do like a 5-year contract, because he could project, his revenue and costs. But it was hard for us, because we're a union shop, and we never know the negotiations, what that's gonna look like and stuff. So there might be some town managers that don't mind doing a 1 or 2-year contract, so that, I think the captain would be good with it, because, like, for instance, now, Harpswell has to have their contract proposal in, because they do their town meeting theoretically in March. A lot of people do it in June, some do it in May, so you're really juggling balls. And then, of course, you've got the school resource officers, and not much happens in the summertime, so there's room for improvement, but I think COVID really kind of got us off a little bit too, because everyone's off kilter, if you will, and haven't really got back. That's the best I can answer that. I mean, I know that there have been emails of, has anyone seen this contract, yada, 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 so I don't have a definitive answer.
Well, I don't think that anybody's getting worried about getting paid, et cetera, Sheriff, but my issue is that we know about it, there is a way to fix it, let's get it done right, so that none of us are in trouble with the public.
I'll be inquiring tomorrow, and I'm sure that Courtney can let me know when it was sent up here. And when it was sent up here is.
Yeah, and it would seem like, we have access to legal assistance and to get the thing written up in a way that it's flexible enough to.
Well, it's pretty easy in that it's boilerplate, and changes really don't happen unless they add another person. So really, it's about, catering to the needs. We have some contracts that they only want certain days filled. Those are usually the SROs, and those are not the same. One school wants it filled all the time, some only when somebody's out for a long period of time. So really juggling the contracts has kind of been, at least when I did it, it's not changed much, is here's what you had last year, how do you want to change it? Then, if it costs, it comes into Alex, and kind of figure out what that's going to look like monetarily. And if somebody says, I don't want to pay for overtime, then we just basically said, okay, just so you understand, this is what not paying for overtime means. You won't get somebody backfilling and stuff like that. So, it's a combined effort. And as much as it's boilerplate in the language, everybody's contract is a little different because they have different needs and.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the commission? So we need to go back and approve 78, 79, and 80.
Move approval.
Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving items 078, 079, 080 on the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The matter carries 5-0. And opera business.
First item up on opera is the authorization of the county manager to award a bid to Radio Communications Management of Portland, Maine, for the radio infrastructure end-of-life upgrade at the CCRCC. This is a $1.76 million enhancement to our facility up in Wyndham, going from an analog radio system to an analog and P25 capable radio system. In addition, as the commissioners are aware, Travis, a few years back, was successful in obtaining $1 million in federal earmark from Senator King and Senator Collins' office. And that earmark is to be put towards mobiles and handheld radios that would be in the towns that we service. But I'd like to invite Mac McKnight and Scott Rivard up to the podium. Actually, Melinda, would you like to say anything before we jump into any presentations? We thought if we're spending $1.7 million in opera funds, that it at least deserves a little bit of presentation on what the county's getting for that 1.7. And so Mac has been great in developing the slideshow to take us all through and give us kind of the 30,000 layman's narrative on what we're getting for our money. The $1 million federal earmark, in your packet, you'll see subscriber equipment pricing. That is, we do not have any set number of radios that we're going to be purchasing at this time, though the RFP that was sent out asked for pricing for such radios. So we will accomplish that through the purchasing of a certain number of radios once we find out what the town's and the county's needs are in that particular case. But I'll stop talking and pass the mic over to Mac for his presentation. It's all yours.
Good evening. My name is Mac McKnight. I'm the president and one of the owners of RCM. My partner Scott Rivard is here with me as well. And Jim and Melinda asked us to just kind of give you a good overview of what it is that the system entails and kind of a high level of what we intend to provide as part of our response to the RFP. My intent today is to not get way down in the weeds and give you a lot of super technical jargon that you don't particularly care about. However, at any point in time you feel like you want to interject or you have more questions, please feel free. I've done this presentation. Sometimes it's 20 minutes. Usually it's when people just want me to stop talking. And sometimes it's an hour when they're really involved, and I really don't want to have to take you to that point. But if you want to go there, and we're happy to oblige. So just whatever is easiest for you, please speak up and let me know. So one of the biggest things to talk about is how we do business in our intent. So we're currently the service provider for the county. We've been maintaining the county system for several years. We are actually instrumental in building that system from the ground up, and we've been supporting it since. So what we had to answer as part of the RFP was, how do we fix this problem? So the existing system is outdated. The equipment's no longer supported by the manufacturers, and the infrastructure is slowly degrading, and it's becoming somewhat problematic for the county. So the intent of the RFP as it was presented to us was to, how do we fix this problem and move forward, getting the county a system that's not only currently ready to support the needs, but future ready to migrate to whatever path the county wanted to take at the time when they felt they were ready to move away from an analog solution to something in the V25 or DMR digital solutions. So to do that, we typically just take the system and we break it into a whole bunch of tiny little parts and start from the bottom and work up, and we go into a real deep engineering session internally to design a system that's going to answer all the questions and solve all the problems as best we can within the confines of our criteria. So we start with our design, and we just go piece by piece by piece. We start with a high-level internal engineering path, and then we go and consider all of me touching the screen, making it freak out. Sorry about that. Wrong button. I wanted to be over here. There we go. Go through all the existing sites and the sites proposed in the RFP, review the existing licensing and any of the existing connectivity or future proposed connectivity required to tie the system together to all the sites, the coverage needs and wants as they are outlined by the county, and any of the features and associated costs to implement all those solutions. So the intent isn't to really just put together an off-the-shelf cookie-cutter solution for you. We design to your request piece by piece by piece from start to finish. This typically for us is a 3-ish month process, so it's pretty involved as far as the design goes. The design is pretty straightforward, all things considering. It's a 9-site system utilizing the current 9 sites that you have with migration from a current partially received of transmit to a fully received, fully transmit solution. So all of the existing sites that are receive only will actually be upgraded so they can transmit as well. The existing infrastructure of your microwave system is been replaced in 2020, and that's really state-of-the-art technology, and it's really serving the county well. That project has already gone through and been taken care of. There's a portion of this for upgrading some ancillary components in that system, and that's been included. Taking some of the outlier sites from a non-redundant solution to being fully redundant, so they have some additional failbacks and protection to help deal with some of the environmental elemental things that we deal with. I mean, it's Maine, right? The weather, winds, no matter how hard you try. So we try to overcome that by upgrading some of the interconnectivity there. And on that microwave system, it's really broken into two sections. There's what they call license 6 gig and license 11 gig. The license 6 gig, as I mentioned earlier, is it's fully functional, it's fully redundant, it's been supporting the county for the last 3 years. It's really just upgrading the 11 gig stuff and getting that equipment so it's brought into the fully redundant architecture. As far as the rest of the system, everything runs on that IP connectivity and then gets delivered back in the dispatch so that we can tie it into there and bring all the data back in for the dispatchers at the touch points at the console, and on the other side for the end users out in the field. In addition to the upgrades for the actual RF equipment, which is what provides the communications from the sites out to the end users, we're also proposing an upgrade of the existing power plant. More often than not, we've seen in this industry specifically that rarely the problem is the radio equipment. It's almost always power. Almost consistently, you pick up the phone, like, this site doesn't work, and sure enough, there's no power. Or the generator didn't start, or there was a power surge or a spike. We partnered several years ago with a company called Remor that makes public safety grade power infrastructure systems, and part of the RFP required that a power system was put in. So we proposed this Remor system and designed it to accommodate the needs of the county and provide you a 4-hour uninterrupted runtime, assuming worst case scenario. From our perspective, this equipment never really fails. When the weather's great, it's nice and sunny, it's a great day, and traffic's really low. Anytime we ever see the power failures tend to happen in this type, it's ice storms, windstorms, rainstorms, major catastrophic events. And surprisingly, the radio systems aren't super quiet during those events, which requires a lot more utilization. So we designed to that specification, not to an idle standby specification. So we'd be upgrading the power systems at each one of these sites so that the entire system is running on this battery infrastructure. As far as the existing antenna systems and the future path antenna systems, they're all designed for each of your sites, designed for the specifications in the RFP, utilizing the equipment. Surprisingly, that you already use. It's the same exact thing, just current production, and it also what your consultant recommended, which also happened to be the same product that we use. So it was fairly convenient to put that system design into place for you. Not much more to say about that. It's not super interesting, so I'm not going to bore you. This part is going to get a little bit technical, but it's important because when we get towards the end of this portion of the presentation, it's going to give you a clear understanding of why we recommend going left per se versus going right. So we use a proprietary software called Raptor, and it helps us design internally to show what the coverage needs and proposed outcome of those coverages would be from an engineering perspective. Now, realistically, the only way you can really know how it's going to end up is in the real world. It has to go out and exist in the system to know what's going to happen. But the software is finely tuned, and it uses a lot of theory and historical knowledge, not only from geographic data, but from regional location and a bunch of manufacturer-specific data. And we put all that in, and we design it as site-by-site-by-site basis. So I'm going to take you through a few different slides here. Excuse me, 5 specifically that help clear this up and make it pretty easy to understand. So we're going to go through what your existing system is, just so you can kind of get a sense of where you are now. And then we'll talk about the proposed system as far as just a high level what it looks like, and then give you a side-by-side comparison of standard coverage, and then we're going to touch on a couple things that are more specific to digital that most people don't really design for, that we think are important, that you get a good understanding of why our design includes that information. So the system is broken into a transmit-receive pattern like we talked about briefly. There are 9 receive-only sites. 5 of those sites also transmit. In our proposal, our intention is to make that 9 for 9 so the system transmits evenly. And you'll see there are some discrepancies in on the right-hand side is where the system transmits out, whereas on the left is where it can receive. And you see there's lots of these white spots where you don't have coverage. So in our industry, we call this a heat map, right? Red is hot, hot is good. This is typically how we go through our design. So anywhere we're looking at these red areas is where you would expect to have better coverage, and any of these white or yellow areas where you're going to have reduced or nearly non-existent coverage. And you can see when the system, the end users are talking out, they're able to talk back into the system much better, which is good, but it's not as good as it could be. And if you have an option to do it an effective way to make it better, that's obviously what we would want the design to. So what we would do is actually take all of your receive-only sites and then make them transmit as well. And that's going to make the heat map that you saw previously look nearly identical for both transmit and receive. And that's what this represents here. So we'd be taking your previous system design and migrating you to this system design. So now you can see how much more enhanced coverage you're going to get over what the current system is able to do. So right here on the left-hand side is your system's current ability to transmit out to end users, and the proposed system redesign allows them to transmit out to much, much more users in a much greater area. So these red areas here are enhanced, especially, for example, this area is much enhanced. Same with this area here, much more enhanced. And from an end user perspective, having reliable communications that's both transmit and receive is very important. So a user being able to talk into the system is very good, but if they can't hear back and vice versa, depending on proximity, that's when they start to see a lot of frustration and some issues with their operation. I'm sure the sheriff would definitely attest to that better than anyone. Excuse me. Okay, this is the part I warned you about that was going to get a little deep on digital, so bear with me. There's something called TDI. TDI is basically when a signal arrives from one site and then it arrives again from a different site, and then that continues to happen depending on where you are in the system. Most equipment is capable of handling up to a certain level of that. It can correct. So basically the same thing happens where all the sites are communicating and the same data arrives at the end user. It's just off a little bit. And the equipment corrects for it, the end user doesn't know, and everything goes along just fine. However, there is a threshold where that exceeds, where the equipment cannot correct for it. And when taken to its most extreme, it can actually cancel out the signal. That's why TDI is bad. With analog, TDI has much more tolerances. You're talking about 120 to 150 microseconds. The equipment's been designed to handle it much better because analog's easier to overcome that type of signal. As you get into different technologies, for example, P25 standard is only 40 microseconds, so anything outside of that, where the two signals arrive outside of that threshold, could actually negatively impact to almost cancel that signal out. So for the end user, they think they're in a coverage area, but because the signals are arriving at different times, it's actually negatively impacting the system. It can actually cancel their ability to communicate. And then with DMR, you can see that's actually worse at 35 microseconds. Anything outside of that threshold, this happens more and more. The system that we propose isn't just P25, it's P25 linear simulcast, which is an important detail because linear simulcast, as far as P25 goes on a digital platform, is the most similar to analog that you can get in a digital version. So those TDI interference issues that you could potentially see are greatly reduced by being able to operate in the 60 to 70 microseconds, so a much larger window, allowing it to overcome that. Okay, this is why all of that actually matters. The blue is where we would suspect that there is no coverage. The transparent area is where you would expect to see standard coverage based on the design that we showed you earlier with heat map. Pink is TDI. Pink are the areas where we would expect you to start seeing problems based on the technology you're using. Now, in analog, it looks even better than the map on the right. In DMR, digital, it looks like the map on the left, which is not ideal. Now, DMR is a great technology. That doesn't dismiss DMR as a technology for a good implementation. The problem is that a county your size, with the number of sites that you're trying to operate in, it's just not the right technology for you because it's not feasible to the distances required just by the sheer size of the county. P25 linear simulcast helps you to overcome that. In those areas where you're going to see the potential for some TDI, we actually try to engineer it out. So once we get the rest of the design system finalized, once we go into final production on a P25, we can actually tune that out of the system. We can sweep the antennas into different directions, and there's some other things that we can do to even reduce that greatly. This is what we consider worst case scenario, right? And that's what we want to show you. We're not going to show you a bunch of fluff that we can't provide. We want you to understand from our perspective what the worst possible case scenario is, and then we will tune out to get away from that. Aside from that, after the system's deployed and accepted by the county, we provide you 24/7, 365, all-inclusive parts and hardware warranty. It's not too dissimilar to the warranty that you're getting from us now. We've been supporting the county 24/7, 365 for a long time. We have 9 on-call technicians. We have our own internal engineering staff. We have our own internal tower division. We have certified climbers all over the state of Maine, and we run 24/7, 365. We are a public safety service company. This is all we do. So it's important that you see that there are some options for you, not only beyond year 1. Years 2 through 5 are also outlined in our proposal and what that would look like moving forward on some of the price options, and giving you some of the options we would propose. Again, extending an all-inclusive 24/7 hardware and labor warranty that protects the county essentially through whatever scenario may occur. Beyond that, it's really just about us and who we are. We are a Maine-based company. We've been here for 40 years. We've been servicing the county and other counties and municipalities throughout the state of Maine since our inception. We have 4 offices located throughout the entire state. We have 23 staff. We have no sales staff at all. We are a fully service-based company. Myself and my partner are integral in everyday operations. We really handle what goes on, and we make it a point to make sure that our customers get support and service, not only from us, but from the vendors and manufacturers. We have long relationships, and almost every manufacturer that you see on the screen, we're either the largest or one of the largest dealers in Maine, New England, or on the East Coast. And there's some of our proposal information. They've actually provided you letters of support in addition to that can be found in the original proposal that we submitted, just to give you a better understanding of what that relationship looks like. And then to wrap things up, this is really some of the other projects we're working on as well. Some of what our other customers are saying. I think the most notable one here is actually a system nearly identical to yours, brought by Mike Larrabee at Waller County. When I talked to Mike and said, hey, is there any chance you'd be interested in giving us a blurb of your new system? He said, yeah, but why don't you just come see me? I said, well, that's going to be hard. He said, nah, just walk them through the site, walk them through the center, anybody, tell them to call 24/7. We'll be happy to have them come see the system and see what it does. And that's just one of many, many, many customers that we support who are getting have gotten a similar system to what we propose to the county. This is a tried and tested technology, and we lean heavy behind it to make sure that the county gets exactly what they're looking for in a way that is cost effective. From our engineering perspective, it's not about getting you an out-the-gate price that is the best and then making it nearly cost ineffective over the tenure. We designed for the 10-year cost of ownership to keep the overall perspective so that you're getting a system that is not only affordable now, but it's also something that can be cost effectively maintained and upgraded. With a lot of the other manufacturers that are on the market, there's not a good path to go one direction or the other without what we call forklift upgrade, basically take all the hardware out, put the hardware in. This entire system is software driven, so it's just license and feature keys. We apply them to the system and make the configuration changes. Aside from that, I promise to keep it super short, so if you have questions, please jump in. Yes, ma'am.
Can you go back, to the map with the red, like, for lack of a better term, with the before and the after?
Sure.
Where is with because it's hard to see from here, where is with the rural community on the maps? I'm talking Casco with Naples, Harrison. Where is that on your maps?
So I know this is a body of water, which puts it in
Is
the
that Big
Naples area.
Sebago?
That's basically
Okay, that's Big Sebago
Yeah.
there.
Well, I can go through the sites, because Harrison is the top left.
Yep. This one.
So that's Harrison. Next one down is Casco.
Yep.
And
Sorry, this one is, this is WPXD, right?
that's right.
Okay, great, and then New Gloucester is right here. Right side. This is Standish, and this is Dispatch. This is Back Bay Tower in downtown Portland.
What's the one, come over to the left? right?
WCHS.
Baldwin.
Says CSH.
Yes,
Oh.
Baldwin.
Over-
WCSH, yeah.
Yeah.
That's,
There's a lot of the white one on, the one on the right. Right above,
Next to Greg.
yeah,
right here.
yes.
Yeah, so this is the wonders of living in and around Cumberland County. The terrain is not super user-friendly. Now, if we had the option to design the system, no holds barred, pick your sites, do whatever you want, then we could help overcome some of those things. What we were given in the request was a specific set of sites that we had to stick within the confines of. So there are some things that we cannot engineer out because our guidelines for the design were limited to the sites provided by the county and the consultant for us to work from as far as our design goes. And mind you, this is theory. The software provides you a theoretical understanding of what the system intended to do, and these maps are all portable. This is not mobile. If we were to show you mobile versions of this maps, it would just be one big red square, and it's not super helpful because it doesn't let you see the nuances and the difference, because mobiles have 45 watts and big giant antennas, and they receive much better than the 5-watt portable that the units carry. So what we designed to, and why we specify portable, is we designed to the worst piece of equipment on the system, the worst case scenario, in hopes that the system is going to provide a realistic coverage for what we would suspect to be the worst case scenario, instead of just showing you, oh no, it's perfect, look, it's almost 100%, it's this giant red map, everything's great, and then you get somebody out there with a radio on a portable and they can't use it in one or two areas, and they say, well, why didn't you tell us about that? We feel strongly about showing you where the potential areas of concern could be.
So we're still gonna have an issue out in the Harrison area?
You're going to have a potential for some coverage issues in that area, yes. But again, we're talking about portable.
Right.
Most of the agencies have a piece of technology in their vehicle, it's called a vehicle repeater, where it basically takes their portable and pushes it through their mobile vehicle. That way they talk on a 5-watt portable,
Right.
and 50 watts comes out of their vehicle and talks in the system, therefore enhancing their coverage tenfold.
Mr. Gordon?
Don't they have a
Oh, I'm
repeater
sorry.
now?
Go ahead.
Don't they have a repeater in the car now?
Yep, absolutely.
So with this new system and the repeater that they have, there shouldn't be that much of a concern in with the Harrison area? Is
That would be a fair assessment, yes. Assuming they're using the repeater. If
Right.
the agency doesn't have one, or they just don't turn it on, then obviously this is what we would expect the scenario for that user to look like.
Commissioner Gordon, did you have a question?
Yeah, can the system easily be expanded?
Absolutely. The original proposal actually included 2 additional sites, and based on the fact that those couldn't be guaranteed, or they could be some cost saving from reducing it, help make it palatable in the current budget and designed out later, those 2 sites were actually removed from the final design. They weren't solid sites, they were just something that were provided to us as an option as far as, hey, if you put some sites here, what's that look like? So we designed to include that. It's a lot of additional legwork to get the leases and all that put together. So there's a lot of time associated with that process, but the system's easily upgradable, very easily upgradable.
And does this system integrate with the national emergency system?
Technically, we can make it do just about anything. The touch point where it integrates with any other system actually happens back at dispatch. There's a lot of multi-channel interface communication devices that are at these sites as well, and those come back into dispatch, and dispatch can actually manage how those interactions occur. I'm not a dispatcher. I would be doing Melinda a great injustice trying to explain that process, but I know that they do have a lot of touch points that would allow them to tie the county's enhanced coverage system into some other emergency systems out there. Is that fair?
Commissioner Cloutier?
I just, if you know, the white splotchy area there, looks like it might be North Yarmouth or
This one down here? Is this where you're referring to?
no, north of there, up there, yeah.
I think that's Cumberland.
Yeah, Bradbury Mountain, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
Pownell.
Yarmouth.
Okay.
Pownell.
Okay, so if that's the case, there is the potential that any of those agencies in this area, if they were to migrate to a system similar to this, we could actually tie the county system into theirs as an additional touch point. And then the county has the ability, using, again, the multi-channel radios located at some of these sites, to have another means to communicate in those areas and talk to those systems from dispatch.
So that is the geography though, as far as we know?
I believe that's always been a bad area.
Yeah.
And in order to fill in those, Cumberland, just to cover Cumberland,
Mhm.
they're looking at 5 sites. I think 4 or 5 sites, tower sites, just to cover the town of Cumberland.
Need a satellite, huh?
Sorry?
Need a satellite? Yeah.
So-
SpaceX will launch something for us, is that the idea?
They're in the process of doing an upgrade as well. I think there are 4 sites just to fill in that white spot. So we would have to do similar.
I know those repeaters come in handy. There's a lot of them on fire trucks in Portland, I think, so.
And realistically, this comes down to the law of diminishing returns. At some point in time, you spend 80% of your budget to get 80 to 90% of your benefits, and then you're going to have to spend that over and over again to get 5% here and 5% there. So when we're trying, again, we talked about designing for a cost-effective 10-year cost of ownership and designing within the parameters given to us. This is the most cost-effective way to get the county the biggest bang for their buck, and a system that will be expandable and reliable for the end users.
Used to call that the law of diminishing returns, I think.
Yes. Yes.
Did the study indicate, or give any information where it might be advantageous for us to add another tower?
It did not. We can look at it from a high level and decide it might. So here's where this gets real misleading, right? You look at this white spot and you go, oh, that'd be a great spot to have our site. But not necessarily. The train may not benefit. The population in that area may not benefit. The county might go, that's cool, but we don't, like, that's a municipality that's serviced already. We don't need county coverage in that area. So when we get to that level where we're asked to take it to the next step and design beyond for future growth, that's usually when we come back to the table and we sit down and go, okay, let's look at the need. Where are you having the most problem? You have the largest population and the most viable place for an existing site or a site to be erected to support that, and then we design to that. Just trying to put a site somewhere just because there's a white spot here or.
I believe that's Scarborough.
Yes, exactly. That's just.
So they have their own radio system that covers the whole town.
Yeah, it's hard to.
Okay,
where's the ocean?
See all this red right here, where it's like perfect red? Yeah, once it hits the water,
Yeah, woo!
that's where you want to live. Live on the water. Coverage is perfect. We can, at any given point in time, if any of you folks like, we can provide you a topographical overlay of these same exact maps. If you want to look at it real world with Google Earth and the coverage, we can provide that at any given point in time. Those are readily available and we keep those on file. So we'd be happy if anybody wants to see at that depth what that looks like. We can definitely provide that to you as well.
Any other questions from the commissioner?
Well, my concern is that I don't see, I see some of the difference out in the rural world, but I don't see a lot. Or am I just not seeing this?
So the benefits of the additional transmit sites are only half the equation. You have to remember, this system is non-supported. It's done. We've had some catastrophic equipment failures that have interjected months in delays in getting warranty repairs or any parts at all. For example, the Baldwin site was offline for 2 months, a month and a half to 2 months, just because the manufacturer doesn't make that equipment anymore, and they had to custom make an alternate component, which also happens to be 500 foot up on a tower that's not easily serviceable. So if it's cloudy that day, we can't go work on it. Just this part of the nuance. So it's not just about enhancing the system above and beyond what's there. It's also about future-proofing it and giving it additional longevity. This enhanced coverage is incredibly beneficial to the end users, but that's only a small piece of the equation.
Other questions or comments from the commissioners?
I just want to say, very nice presentation, thank you.
Very thorough, we appreciate it. So, we need,
Move
is
passage?
there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? And to be clear, where the language is that we are passing acceptance of the radio infrastructure end-of-life upgrade for $1,766,930, and the $1 million, that's it, because the $1 million federal earmark is already there, Jim, right?
It's already there. It would just be purchasing the equivalent in radios through the schedule that has been provided under the subscriber equipment pricing in the bid.
And essentially, from the presentation, it's phase 1 and 2, but not phase 3.
Correct. Phase 3 was the 2 towers Mac talked about. We opted not to go in that direction because there wasn't solid science that they were going to help out our system. And working with RCM, they assured us that phase 1 and phase 2 got us where we needed to be, and we could always look at a future date into expanding our tower system, much like Mac just relayed.
And the entire $1.766 million is from our ARPA funds available.
It is from ARPA funds, correct?
Very good. Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, in the radio committee letter to the county board directors, can somebody explain the timeline that is in that letter? I got lost trying to get down through it.
I can do my best, Commissioner. Essentially, the timeline, so this was a group of approximately...
Well, Linda, why don't you come right up to the mic?
There's a group of approximately 12 members from our partnering agencies, our fire and police departments. Our board of directors hand-selected some folks that they thought would make good radio experts to kind of go down this endeavor. And the timeline was intended to those communities who might benefit from leveraging the $1 million that the county was able to secure, could agree to move in the same direction as the county with their upgrades to hopefully get us to a place of some sort of county infrastructure in our future. The timeline was put in there to kind of keep us on our toes and on track to some forward momentum with this, as it relates to specifically to the county.
Well, I know, but let's go through it. I mean, you've got the 1 and 2 years, you've got this to be accomplished, and
Sure.
but what happens if you try to follow down through the explanation, at least for me, is that you get lost after the part C.
Commissioner, are you talking about bullet point number 4 in the timeline? And then section
Yes.
C?
What page? No, it was just.
So specifically with section C, so again, this is a recommendation that a group of folks made to the board of directors. So the board of directors would stand behind a unified approach to what they would ask the county to do going forward. So section C here is referring to potentially during that phase of it, looking at hiring a professional communication consultant to actually take the county to whatever the next phase of building out this radio infrastructure is. Much like some of the questions that you commissioners have had so far regarding some of the perceived coverage area issues in the mapping. Like the manager said, one of them in particular is the County Star Code. So would the county ever want to leverage a county infrastructure? If that was the case, we probably would want somebody who's some sort of a radio expert to look at the entire infrastructure and make some sort of a recommendation. So that's specifically what section C is referring to.
In D?
The 6 to 7 years.
Yeah.
The hope would be to, with the help of a radio expert and/or our radio vendor, take this particular P25 platform to the next level. And based on the information that this group of folks gathered and the level of expertise they may represent, the recommendation would be to migrate towards a P25 trunking system.
So what I'm gathering from that, and if you, at least I presume the same criteria holds for electronics, that 6 to 7 years out, you're starting to look at another system.
Not being a radio expert, I think it would be more looking at enhancing the current system, maybe not in 6 to 7 years, but the recommendation from this group was to look at it at that point and start heading in that direction.
But isn't it normal that the 6 to 7 years out, you should be looking at something?
So you should be looking at it, I would say, you always want to be planning what's coming, but realistically, this system, like you said, is more intended to give you a 10-year cost of ownership, so that you're really projecting it out to a 10-year before you start reevaluating what that looks like moving forward.
How long was the previous system? When was that purchased? 2010, so it's been,
The manufacturers have also included a letter saying they would support your system up to that and beyond by a couple of years as well, as part of the supporting documentation that I mentioned earlier. That was included in the response.
So we're looking somewhere between 7 to 12 years or something like that?
On average, yes, sir.
I guess what I was getting to is that seeing all these signatures on here, I thought the thing was more definitive, or that's what I was really looking for, is that this is what's going to happen, and my question was, if it does not, what's to occur?
Sure, so this committee was put together as an advisory group to the Cumberland County Board of Directors, so that the Cumberland County Board of Directors could stand behind whatever education this group has.
But I presume that it's the county board that signed the letter.
These signatures are members of that committee,
The committee and not the board.
and the Board of Directors did vote to stand behind this.
thank you. Any further questions or comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, I call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Matter carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Look forward to an ongoing relationship in support of our radio system. Next item on the agenda is authorize the purchase of 27 Northport Drive, Portland, Maine, for the negotiated price of $4.6 million. Manager Gailey.
Thank you. As the commissioners are aware, back in August, the commissioners took a site walk of a building that was brought to our attention from the Bullis Company as a potential alternative site to us looking down at the jail complex, building a freestanding building down there. As the commissioners are aware, we learned a lot during the design of the jail medical wing expansion, and in particular, the contaminated soils that were unearthed, heavy in lead, back in the early 90s, when we did a lot of soil remediation for the jail down there. Lead was not one of those items that was tested for. Well, in 2023 it is. And so we came upon a significant cost associated with just the medical wing to remediate the soil, let alone when you start putting in a 10,000, 12,000 square foot pad site plus parking lot. We went through a preliminary design of that site down at the jail complex and found that the site for a 25,000 square foot building that really wasn't everything that we wanted. It did not include the back road to the parkway. The estimated range of price was $16 to $17 million. And we shifted focus towards this building rather quickly as a result. And we had the August 22nd site walk with the commissioners here at 27 Northport Drive in the North Deering part of Portland. At that 22nd meeting, the commissioners entered into executive session and came out authorizing the county manager to negotiate a sales price for this building. The cost of the building was $4,995,000. We put a bid price in a little lower than that and ultimately came to an agreement of $4.6 million. This is a 32,500 square foot, three-story freestanding building with a abundance of parking, as the parking is all within an association. The abutting properties to us are WGME, Channel 13 News, and LL Bean's call center just recently moved out of the complex, and so there's some transition there in the abutting building. So we are moving forward. We have this property under contract as it stands today. We are currently going through an appraisal. We are doing a Phase 1 environmental. We have done a building inspection, waiting for that report, and we are doing a title review. It is at the request of legal counsel that we finalize with the county commissioners the sale price of this building, so that it is final in terms of the negotiated price being $4.6 million, and having an order that reflects that. And there is an order in your packet that is prepared by the legal counsel to reflect the specifics of the sale. And so that is the intent of today, or tonight's action, is just to solidify, as you gave me guidance on a ceiling to go up to, but this is to pin down the exact number. One thing I should make mention is that this building is full of furniture. There is a significant number of conference tables, desks, cubicles. It ranges the limit. They did not fully move out, and there is a significant, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of office equipment in this building that is part of the sale price if we so choose. It's my intentions to meet up with department heads who will be moving to this building in the next 2 weeks and going in and seeing what we want out of that and asking the sellers, Martin's Point Healthcare, to remove the stuff that we do not feel we have use of. So with that, we are hoping to move forward, if all goes well with the work that we're currently doing on this site, towards a closing sometime maybe in the first week of October, second week of October, and we will move from there on an interior design and construction fit up. So with that said, I will stop there and answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Questions for Jim? Just one or two small issues. When would you anticipate that how long the refitting would be, and when would we be transferring to that building?
The Facilities Department is estimating that we are looking at probably 3 or 4 months of interior design work, then putting it out to bid, and then depending upon construction schedules of those who bid, we could probably be looking at this time next year in the move-in, just because of everything lining up. And that's lining up perfect, in a sense. So one thing I should make mention that the departments that will be going over to this facility, we are consolidating still. That was one of our main goals of locating down at the jail complex, is consolidation. Tried to consolidate all the silos of departments that we have around. We will be moving 3 offices out of the Old Port that we currently rent 2 different office spaces for. The Registry of Deeds, the Regional Assessing Program, the Public Health Program are all in rented space down in the Old Port. All 3 will be moving to this building. Out of the courthouse, we will be moving the Finance Office, the Human Resource Office, IT, CDBG, a portion of facilities management, executive office, and I am missing someone, I know I am, but the intent of the vacant offices here in the courthouse will be allowing the district attorney's office to backfill and thin out their offices down in the basement and up into our offices here on the first floor. And one other department that will be moving down will be emergency management. They are currently up in the bunker on the ground, up in Wyndham. I thought that a window or two might serve them good, so, so we have invited them down to this building, so, thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners?
Just to that,
Yes,
to that,
Patty.
to that point of moving everyone under one roof, the leases we currently have, will they kind of match up with our move time, or do we pay any penalties for ending our lease sooner than later?
I think we will be paying penalties.
Okay.
I believe, and I need to dive into those two separate leases, but we do have the ability to sublet.
Okay.
And I would find that the location, and this is just my guessing, but a strong belief that the location where the Registry of Deeds and Regional Assessing sit, right in the heart of the old port down here on the corner, underneath the parking garage, that's a very attractive space. And I could see as subletting, or if the landlord will allow us to get out of that lease if it's leased up. So we will be working with the landlord. It's the same landlord for both properties, and we will be looking to devise some exit strategy
Okay,
for both sites.
thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Cloutier.
Just going to say, this was an opportunity to save millions of dollars and avoid a very challenging construction opportunity in a fairly hostile site, as we understand it. And one thing I hope that we'll be able to do is move forward with this, but also as well get a more long-term understanding of what the remediation would be independent of any building plans on that property. I mean, we don't particularly want to own useless land. The process of remediation, as I understand it, if you've got enough time, there are much simpler but slow ways to get rid of hazardous issues. So maybe sometime in the next year or two, we'll have an outline of how that could be accomplished. And so, but I, of course, fully support this. I think it's, it's been a bad 3 years in the commercial real estate world and in Portland in the commercial real estate world, and the taxpayers are going to be a beneficiary of that in this term.
And if I could, one thing that we did realize through this effort was the county back in the late 80s, early 90s purchased the property down at the jail site before doing the environmental exploration. If you look at the brownfields requirements, that's a no-no, and it disqualifies you from brownfields money. And so we were unable to seek brownfields money to help offset the remediation of the site, not only for the medical wing, but also this office building that we were looking at. And to follow up with Commissioner Cloutier's comments, this has set a better course financially for the county. $16 to $17 million building a building would have had us paying some money down up front because we do have the opera funds. However, we were still looking at about 20 years of $400,000 a year in payments. That just didn't jive with us. And this will be paying $4.6 million cash with no debt on the backside because of the opera loss revenue funding that we have available to us.
Jim, is it also correct that we have ARPA funds left that will assist us in completing the upfit and retrograde of this building?
We have a small amount of lost revenue funds. We can't use regular opera funds for this, but the lost revenue bucket we can use, and we have a small amount of funds there that could be put towards for fit up of this building to make it ours.
Very good.
Anybody move passage yet? I'll
No.
move.
Do we have a second?
Second, but move as written.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Good catch.
Right. Seeing no further discussion, I call the vote. All those in favor as supporting the purchase of this site for a move of our administrative office as written, say aye.
Aye.
Nay? Matter carries 5-0.
Thank you. And we do have to have the commissioners all sign this order, so I can pass that around now.
We should have asked him while he was here.
Yeah.
We could get a better mic system.
Item 23089, authorization for the county manager to submit the county's consolidated annual performance evaluation report.
Yes, this is the 2022-2023 CAPER for the CDBG program. And as always, in September, we invite Kristen Stiles, the director, to come introduce this CAPER report to us.
Thank you very much, Kristen Stiles, Community Development Director. In September.
Give it a sec, we'll catch up to you.
Okay, all right. By September 28th of every year, we are required to submit to HUD a consolidated annual performance evaluation report. This is a report of our expenditures from the previous year, as well as our accomplishments. This is my favorite report to get to come to you guys for, because this is the fun one where I get to show you pictures of everything we've done this past year. I was actually a little bit surprised at how much we spent. The past couple of years, our numbers have been significantly higher because we had additional COVID funds that we were also running programs for and spending down. But it seemed surprising to me about how much construction money we spent this year. So we had a lot of construction projects that finally caught up. As you may know, our funds become available July 1st, so it's pretty hard to do any road construction project when July 1st you haven't even put out a bid. So a lot of times it takes over a year for the design and engineering, going out to bid, and then getting on a construction schedule. But to go over a few of our accomplishments and a little bit of background, the Community Development Block Grant Program, we have our Cumberland County entitlement jurisdiction. So that's all of Cumberland County except for Portland and Brunswick. And of the money that we are allotted each year, South Portland and Bridgeton have a set aside of those funds. In 2022, we were allocated a little over $1.5 million. The county was $932,000, South Portland was $424,000, and Bridgeton was $191,000. I threw in last year's numbers as well, just for a little bit of reference. In 2021, we were also $1.5 million, just slightly higher, $40,000 more than we received in 2022. Our home partnership program. This is the one that we do with the city of Portland, and this one includes Brunswick, and Brunswick is included in the county side. We separate the funds between the county and the city of Portland. And we had $529,000, which was allocated to us, and then we had a whopping $628,000 in program income and unspent funds. So we got to allocate quite a bit of money this year. I think there's a typo on the 1.5 million, because 525 plus, I think that should be a zero. Oops. I think it's 1 million. I'm sorry, it's correcting your report. I think it's 1,889,000. And then finally, I wanted to just give a quick wrap up, since we're finally done just about with our COVID funds. We only have one program left open of the 1.8 million that we received in COVID funds, and we have 34 projects that successfully were completed and closed out. The only remaining open project is the City of Portland Resettlement Coordinator. This is a position that we created at the City of Portland to help organize all of the hotels and housing that was happening outside of the City of Portland area, but also impacting the City of Portland's homeless program. So this coordinator was working with all of the hotels and service providers in the area, and that's why we have decided to keep this one open. We will be closing it out in December. The position is not closing, and the department's actually grown quite a bit. I think there's 3 or 4 people, and Travis might know this because it's now funded under United Way. So we've kind of transitioned slowly of getting our funds backing out of it, and United Way will be continuing to take that on. So a couple highlights from this past year. We spent a little over excuse me, can't say numbers now. A little over $2 million, and the year before we spent $2.2 million. A good chunk of that was the COVID funds. Through Habitat for Humanity, we did 27 homes this year. Last year was in the 30s. One of the reasons it was lower this year is because now that they're doing interior work, the size of the projects are getting a lot larger, and more people are finding out about the program. And so it's no longer just putting in, fixing somebody's handrail. It's now going in and replacing entire septic systems and roofs and much larger scale projects. All of the work that is being done is life safety work and making sure that the homes are code compliant. We also did 13 ADA ramps. This is an ongoing program that we have with Alpha One. We had 193 families that were served by the Bridgeton Food Pantry. I'd like to point out that Bridgeton Food Pantry is completely volunteer run. They don't get any grants other than ours, and they just do a big donation drive. It is a really unique program that they are managed to serve as many families as they do with how small of an operation they actually have. So they use our funds to purchase food from Good Shepherd. The Harrison Food Bank is much, much larger. We have been working with them for a very long time. The current project that we're doing with them is the sprinkler system. Because of the amount of work that we've done to the building and all of the upgrades, and now the number of volunteers working inside of this building, it's now made the state say you need a sprinkler system, which makes a lot of sense. So to make matters more complicated for them, they're not on town water there, so they need a sprinkler system that's connected to tanks or some other type of system because you need water there to run it. So even though they're doing all of this operation, they're serving over 600 families a week. The photos of the lines of cars, or if you drive by there weekly, I believe it's on Tuesdays that it's open. It's really impressive, the system that they have created. In Bridgeton, they have created a winter clothing program. The purpose of this program started off to help kids at the schools who don't have the proper winter clothing to get to go outside at recess, because if you don't have a coat, you don't have shoes, you're not allowed to go outside, rightfully so. But we want to make sure that all kids are allowed to go outside and participate in outdoor activities. So they started offering it to the kids, and then a couple parents were saying, can I possibly get a coat as well? And so they expanded the program. They advertised at the schools, and they advertised on social media, and they did multiple shopping events where they kind of set up a whole store and allowed families to come in and get whatever winter gear they needed to get. Then we had 38 kids receive scholarships. This is the South Portland and Bridgeton summer camp programs. This is for kids that don't necessarily qualify for the state vouchers for summer camp, so we're not ever subsidizing something else. We try very hard to use our CDBG funds to fill gaps when other programs are falling through. So the number is low, but these are 38 kids that otherwise would not have been able to go to summer camp had it not been for these funds. And these are all for working families who need some type of childcare provided for their children all summer long, or else they're not able to work. We have served 307 victims of domestic violence through these doors. This number excludes Portland and Brunswick, and it's also only one of through these doors programs. I don't like how large that number is, given that it's only one of the programs that they're running. They do a lot of really great work here in Cumberland County. The Interculture Community Center of Westbrook, this year they served 145 new American families. They do everything from helping you sign up for school to helping you find housing. They do adult education programs. They did a bus transportation program this year. They help you read your mail if you're not understanding your mail. The level of involvement that they have in these families to try and help them integrate into our community there's nothing else like that that's happening around the Cumberland County area. And to show you how much their parent program is expanding, they were offering very similar services last year, and they served 64 families. So it is growing quite a bit, the number of families that they're serving. And then we have Vet to Vet had served 42 veterans this year. The Vet to Vet program, they help homebound vets, ones that are not able to get out and be in the community. They match them up with a vet, so somebody, another former veteran that understands what they have been through, maybe served in the same war that they did, and a good portion of what they're doing is offering companionship to this person, but then at the same time as offering companionship, they're showing them all these resources that are potentially available to them. They're getting them signed up for Meals on Wheels or other services that might be able, that they can qualify for. Through several different housing programs like Quality Housing Coalition and Greater Portland Family Promise, they were able to move 75 families from the hotels into permanent housing this past year with the help of our CDBG funds. And then through the resettlement coordinator CV program, they are now up to 177 organizations that are partnering to help serve these homeless families and get resources out there and find out what's happening and kind of connecting everyone. And that connection was not happening in any kind of uniform way before this resettlement coordinator position was created. It's been a huge help. And then lastly, the South Portland Hub. This is a model that has been taken over by the state and is kind of seen as the gold standard of what we want to create in communities. This hub does everything. The idea is it's a community center, it's a place for people to gather, it's a place that if a kid needs to just come in and use the bathroom, they come and use the bathroom or grab a snack. If they need help with their homework, they're coming in there. They're serving 575 households through various programs. They have a diaper program, a senior meals program, they deliver meals, they have a caravan where you can just come pick up a box of food. They have all kinds of programs that they're running, and their whole goal is to not just come in as Opportunity Alliance and say, this is what we're doing here, we're serving you. They are getting the members of this community get together and say, what do we want, what do we need, how can we help each other, and have them pick it up and run it. So it's not Opportunity Alliance running it, it's they are helping to facilitate the neighborhood running it, which is a great model that we'd like to see more of. So my fun part, the pictures. So in Bridgeton, next to a lot of these I have PY, and that stands for program year. So as you'll notice, a lot of the program years are prior program years because of that construction cycle, and it often takes more than a year to get construction projects built, even when they've been started. So this year we did Elm Street. This is a very heavily used sidewalk that's in downtown Bridgeton, and we also did Highland Beach. There is no safe passageway to get to the beach, so by creating the sidewalk, it's now a safe passageway for residents to use. I showed you an update last year of the Gorman Wolf Little Falls Rec Area bathrooms. There were no bathroom facilities, and it's a very heavily used field area, so we're excited that the bathrooms are now up, functional, and working. They created, obviously, a men's and women's bathroom. There's also a snack shack inside the building, which I've heard is quite popular. Cundy's Harbor Library, this whole back part that you see had fallen by 2.5 inches because they had used 1-inch nails to hold it on when they built it. So they had to square up the entire back half of the building, which meant removing all of the windows in order to do this. The entire first floor, all of the beams had rot on them because it's right next to the water, and the second floor had carpenter ants. So they pretty much replaced every single beam in the entire back half of the building. They reinstalled the windows, put in insulation, and then eventually got to do the siding, which was what they had originally applied for the grant for. So they ended up, they had program year 2020 money, blew through that very quickly, and then applied for 2021 money to finish the job since it was a lot larger than they had planned. The library is now absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the cutest libraries around if you ever get a chance to go check it out. South Portland School Street Playground. This playground was very unsafe to use. There were pieces of metal sticking up all over the place. They worked with the community to design the new playground. What I liked about it was they decided to try and make the playground suitable for more than just the average 5 to 12 age range. They tried to put things on there for smaller kids and then also for middle school and teenage kids that you don't often see on a playground. An example of that is this kind of butterfly looking thing here in the corner. If you've ever watched like Ninja Warrior, that's what that is. It's part of like a Ninja Warrior course. And they have several other things on there to kind of encourage older kids to come and play and do something on the playground as well. The senior wing at the community center in South Portland, this was a preschool area. So you had seniors trying to use toilets that were designed for preschoolers. And the room was not set up whatsoever for seniors to use. This project was put on hold a little bit because of COVID, but they powered through, they got it done, they put up acoustic tiles so that you can hear a lot better, ADA accessible doors that are easier to open and close for seniors. They've put in a kitchen area that isn't, I don't have a good picture of it, and it's now being heavily used by a good chunk of seniors on a weekly basis. In Westbrook, the Cornelia Warren Park, we are on phase 4 of this. I think there's going to be about 65 phases of fixing up this park that never seems to end. But this portion of the grant originally was to fix the pool. They then discovered that it was going to be millions of dollars to fix the pool because it was drilled into ledge, and there was no way to properly do that. So they talked to the community still really wanted an outdoor pool. They found other locations, held some meetings. We provided this past year a study for them, a feasibility study to see if they could actually put a new pool at the location that the community has chosen. They can, thankfully. So we have a nice report for that. And here, I don't have a picture of what it looks like as of today, but they have filled the pool, made it flat, and they have changed this into a multi-use field now. So it will be repurposed and still used, even though it's not a pool. And I showed you some photos of this last year, and they finished it up this past fall. The Westbrook boat launch is absolutely beautiful down there now. Every time I've driven by, there's a lot of people using this boat launch. What they've put in the water right here, I think is such a neat system. You can easily pull your kayak there, and then that bottom piece out there puts your kayak kind of in the water for you, and then you just row back onto it to get back out. So it makes it nice and easy for the average person to get a kayak in and out of the water without needing a bunch of equipment. Their goal is eventually to provide kayaks at a very reduced rate or even free to members of the community that live in that area. In Wyndham, we did a economic development job creation program. We teamed up with the City of Wyndham, Great Falls Construction, and then Great Falls Construction hired Ben from Junction Bowl to then create Red City Ale House. The idea behind this one was this is an old abandoned firehouse that nothing was really happening in. It's a great area to try and revitalize the little downtown area. And so let's put in a restaurant that's desperately needed. And the 2 times that I've gone by, I went by at, I think it was about 10:45, 11 in the morning, and they already had people inside there on a, I don't know, Tuesday morning, which I was extremely surprised to see the number of people in there at, that time on a Tuesday morning. They have a nice outdoor patio area. The big sign hanging in the front was meeting our advertising requirements of wanting to get people who live locally to work at this place. So we created 15 jobs. Most restaurant industry jobs are all filled by low and moderate income individuals. And it's beautiful inside. If you haven't had a chance to go check it out, I definitely recommend it. And the fish sandwich is delicious. If you want to check that out too. We have very few photos for all of our public service activities, but this is one that we recently got for the Westbrook Intercultural Community Center. The photo on your left here, this is learning the bus system. They've been working with GPCOG to have a ambassador program, and so they go out and they learn how to use the bus system to help you get around, and they've been offering bus passes as well. The photo on the right is a bunch of the teachers that work there. I believe all of those teachers, except for the one furthest on the left, are in the adult ed program. The one on the furthest to the left, she is running the youth program, which they did a lot of really cool youth stuff this year, but that wasn't funded with CDBG, so I didn't include slides of that. Along with the Wyndham restaurant, we wanted to create some parking down there with the idea of if you have parking, it's easier for more businesses to come into the properties in that location. So we put in a parking lot. It's actually in the parking area where the Cumberland County water.
Soil and water.
Soil and water, there we go. Cumberland County Soil and Water is located. It's also right next to the Mountain Division trailhead too. So it's a great spot. Wyndham has a big plan to redo the entire sidewalk right there, making it more pedestrian friendly, slowing down traffic, and adding lights to make it pedestrian safe. Last slide I believe that I have here is Yarmouth Senior Housing. They had stoves that were over 30 years old in all 28 of the units. And they didn't have any storm doors. So they were expecting the stoves to cost more than they did. So when the stoves came back low enough, they asked if they could use the rest of the money to put on storm doors, which apparently the residents absolutely loved this year when they were able to keep their doors open and have some nice breeze going through. And then the photo on the right is a community stove that is in the community room that has not been working for several years, and we were able to replace that as well. So everybody living in here qualifies as low and moderate income, and it's all 55 plus seniors. So it's a small project, but very beneficial to those folks. So that was it for our CDBG program. For our home program, as slow as some of our construction projects work for CDBG funds, they work even slower for our home funds. By the time, they're stacking up those layers of funds, and then after they get that done, then they can go to construction closing, and then it's, 6 months after construction closing that we actually get some type of groundbreaking or movement happening. So I just did our 2022, which was this past year, and 2021 projects, and that's where this 1.8 million number is coming from. So we have our money from HUD, and then we have our program income, which the past couple of years, because housing prices in Cumberland County have gone up so much, and we used to have a home buyer program many, many years ago, that when people are paying that back, we're getting a bunch of program income from that. So we have a total of 6 projects that have happened. The only one here that is complete is Avesta West End Phase 2 in South Portland. So if you drive along Westbrook Street there, you'll see 2 giant, very beautiful Avesta buildings. In the bottom of one of those Avesta buildings, that's now where the South Portland Hub has moved into, to create a larger community space in there and create that community environment. So far, all of these projects are on schedule. It just takes a while to get completed. And I believe that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I have the full CAPER report, which is just a lot more boring than getting to look at the fun pictures of it. I'm happy to share that with you. It will be up on the website as soon as I figure out how to fix and do that. We'll be there Wednesday at the latest. We'll be up on the website.
As always, Kristen, thank you. A very informative and thorough presentation. Any questions or comments from the commissioner?
Great job.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm always amazed at how much work we're getting done through these programs. What really piqued my interest, because the area that I'm in is the new Mainers that have come in. And one of the systems that I will give you a heads up on is that we've got these farmer markets, and the local people are trying to support them so that they can get fresh vegetables, et cetera, to these new Mainers. The problem we're having, obviously, is like anything else, is funding. And what occurred this last time is that what they had last year, they more than gave them money to participate in it. And the people that are running it are now coming back and asking for another tranche of the same amount, which obviously there isn't there. How does one go about talking to either an organization like yours or somebody else and get this program kind of developed and move forward?
So in order to apply for CDBG funds, you need to be a municipality or a 501c3. And we have had situations where someone can find a it's called a fiscal sponsor that is their 501c3 that's willing to help them out and be that for them. So if they are a 501c3, we can do it that way. If you'd like to give them my information, I'd be so happy to walk them through it. What we do is we release the application to all of the towns and cities in Cumberland County in November each year, and then we do a pre-application in December. The reason we do that pre-application is just to make sure that what people are applying for is actually eligible. Because it's a federal application, it's kind of long and cumbersome, and we just don't want anyone having to waste their time. And we can pretty easily figure out if we can fit it into one of our boxes and make it an eligible project. And then they submit the full application. So if it's a county-wide farmers market thing, they could come to us and we would apply on their behalf directly. Or if it's located in just one town, that town could apply. Or if it's several towns get together often and apply for the CDBG funds. So, often it's Westbrook and Scarborough and Gorham turning in one application for something that's happening in their specific area.
Thank you.
We need a motion.
Move passage.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor?
Right up there.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Nay?
You don't need it?
And so we're authorizing the county manager to submit the report to HUD. Thank you again, Kristen. Next item, 23090, approval of the current action plan for the allocation of Cumberland County Opioid Settlement Fund. Manager Gailey.
Thank you. This item's coming forward as in a sense, a game plan or a strategic thinking on how the county is going to begin working on allocating the opioid funds that we have received to date and in the future. As the commissioners know, there has been a significant landmark case of settlement that we were part of with the opioid companies. And we are slated to receive upwards of $200,000-300,000 a year through this settlement of the Opioid Settlement Act. We are in need of beginning to allocate that. It should just not sit in an account. There is a need out there, and the need is in the prevention and treatment of the opioids, in addition to taking care of internal work that we're currently doing down at the jail. And so we've asked Public Health, in particular Liz, to work through a game plan on what this would look like over the next 3 to 5 years on allocations of opioid funding into what areas. And she has done that, but also has provided a first-year budget of what we would spend down out of that account. This is all in jiving with the requirements of the opioid funds and how we need to disperse them to eligible uses and just not sit on them, because they're doing no good if we sit on them. So I'd like to ask Liz to come up and give you a presentation of her plan that we're bringing forward, and work through that and present the first year budget for the coming year.
Hi, thanks all for having me. Liz Blackbaum-Moore, I'm the Director of Public Health here, and I thought I have, in your packet, you have a bunch of information. I thought I'd just offer a couple highlights for you all on that. I thought I'd highlight a little bit of some of the information about the settlement, and then, some of the settlement specifics for us, and then provide you with a roadmap for a proposal for how to allocate those funds, and then go over just some brief details of the assessment that we've done, an action plan that's about a 5-year action plan with a 1-year funding plan for you all. So a little bit just about the settlement in general. As a part of the settlement, to hold the pharmaceutical supply chain accountable for the damage that they caused and their role in the opioid epidemic, the state and certain subdivisions entered into a memorandum of agreement regarding the use of those funds. The AG's, the Attorney General's office, they received 20% of the funds over 18 years. The subdivisions, which we are one, so there are the 16 counties are a part of the subdivisions, as well as specific towns that were either in the litigation or have a population of over 10,000. They're also part of the subdivisions, and all of those groups together will receive 30% of the opioid settlement funds to Maine. And then the Maine Recovery Council will be in charge of allocating and dispersing the rest, the 50% that's left. So I actually was elected to the Maine Recovery Council to represent the subdivisions, and the Recovery Council is still in process for figuring out kind of our own, the process we're going to be using at the state to allocate those 50%. I'm here today to share with you sort of a proposed roadmap for how we might allocate our funds here at the county. Some of the specifics, we'll be receiving, we've received some payments already. So currently we have about $315,000 in the account that we've already received. The lawyers for the settlement estimate that we'll get somewhere around $210,000 each year for the next 18 years. That varies because some of the settlements gave more lump sums up front, some are for the whole 18 years, some are for 8. It's a kind of a complicated mix of dollar amounts. And we are yet to complete some of the settlements, specifically the ones with Purdue and the Sackler family has not been settled yet, so so we assume there'll be actually a little bit more funding. There's an approved list of uses through the Memorandum of Understanding. There are a lot of strategies that can be funded within prevention, harm reduction, treatment, recovery, as well as funding that can be used for leadership and coordination. I guess in the proposal that you have before you, I'm proposing that we use the Gallup principles for the use of the opioid settlement funds that were outlined by the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. These are principles that many states and subdivisions are adopting as kind of their principles for how to use these funds. And they're the ones that they're the guiding principles for the Maine Recovery Council as well. And those principles include, they're fairly simple. One is spend money to save lives. Two is use evidence to guide spending. Invest in youth prevention. Focus on racial equity. And develop a fair and transparent process for deciding where to spend the funding. So in the spirit of all of these, but particularly in the development of a fair and transparent process, I've provided with you what I would say is a process for figuring out how to allocate these funds over the next 18 years. And that includes, if you go to page 2 of the proposal that I've given you, essentially we'd love to conduct an assessment every 3 to 5 years to see what's happening, what's working, what's not working, where are there gaps. And that would include things that the county internally is doing to address the opioid epidemic and substance use disorder in general, but also what's happening in the community. From there, we would create an action plan, and we would do that in development, we'd do that within the public health department, but also through our conversations and partnership with other county departments that are involved in some of the work. Once we have that action plan, develop a budget, I guess we're proposing that this first several years we provide you with a 1-year budget, because we are not at this time knowing exactly where, since we're just starting and we want to have some flexibility. We aren't going to lock ourselves in. Everybody's sort of figuring out, they're all the towns that are getting money. They're trying to figure out what they're doing with the money. So in order to kind of have a little bit of flexibility, but also get some money out the door to meet the needs, we thought giving you a 1-year budget and coming back over the next several years to give you 1-year budgets. And then hopefully as we get a little more stable how we're spending the funding can give you larger, several years in advance of budgets. And then from there, we would create an RFP process if we need to. If there are funds we want to use outside of for the county, that it's funds for, say, interventions that nonprofits can do, or if it's, money that needs to go directly to communities, we would then have a request for proposal process with folks from at least, folks outside of the county as well, helping us with that process. We propose to work in communities that are the most impacted. Not all communities have been impacted equally, and we think that really doing specific work of focusing on those who've been most impacted is important for this funding. And of course, then we would be giving you reports every year that also go to the state to meet the needs of the MOU, as well as just public, transparent process. So that's a kind of an overall process that we're proposing for you. In terms of this year, we've done a bunch of assessment work. Using the county health improvement planning process, we talked to a lot of people about this issue. And then we also did, with our behavioral public health manager and the folks who are doing prevention work, we were able to have lots of conversations and do another kind of brief assessment of what do people think we should be using the funding for. And there was a pretty clear consensus in there, and I've shared with you our brief assessment results. I won't go through them, but essentially the priorities really are around coordination. There's a lot happening to address this problem across the county, and yet there is not a lot of coordination of efforts. And so there's this real need for that. And Brandon, our behavioral public health manager, has been doing some incredible work of trying to move towards coordination and supporting all these organizations and just all these efforts to be more coordinated. There are some specific needs around interventions. The problem of substance use disorder has become much more complicated. polysubstance use, meaning people who are using multiple substances, has very much changed the nature of what's effective for treatment. And so there's a real need there for adapting and innovations. And then in the prevention realm, we have lots of young people and families that have been really impacted by this. And direct work with them in the communities they live in has really not been a place that has been funded. Funding for prevention is often at this kind of universal level, but not really at this targeted to young people who, are now living with grandparents, who've lost parents, who have parents that are incarcerated. So there's a real need for that. So we are proposing some strategies that you can see on page 4 and 5 that are really specific to meeting those needs. And then lastly, you'll see we have a funding plan for this year, is really to continue to fund that behavioral public health manager salary and some program funds. And in terms of interventions, currently the work that we're doing at the county appears that we have the funding, essentially we're meeting the funding needs that we have for doing the work around medication for addiction treatment and around we're funded for the reentry staff that are through we have a COSAP, it's called COSAP grant, and you may be familiar with it. I really was working on, and those folks are fully funded this year. If that changes, we would be able to adapt in the next year to be able to make up any gaps that we have for funding. And then lastly, some funding we've set aside, we'd like to set aside for doing some of that work around early interventions and for prevention for those families and young people who have been most impacted. So that was kind of a whirlwind tour of the proposed proposal here, but I'd love to, I'm happy to take any questions or comments that you all have on the proposal.
Questions or comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Cloutier.
Hi, thanks. I thought I saw in the report a discussion of fatalities from overdosing that suggested that the fatality rate in Cumberland County is less than the statewide rate. Do we have any understanding of, A, whether that's true, and B, do we have any understanding of why? I mean, I just looked at a mathematical proportion, and it seemed like there was a larger fatality rate in other parts of the state.
Well, we're at about, I think it's not in here, I don't know if I put it in here, that number. I think we're about 20% of the overdoses happen in Cumberland County, and what do we make up 22? It's about a 2% difference maybe in population. I think partly we have when you're in really rural areas of the state, it's much harder for there to be a response that helps people survive overdoses. So partly there's a issue of, in some parts of the state, it took longer before folks were really giving out naloxone that's reverses overdoses. And so I think in Cumberland County, there's law enforcement was on board very quickly to be part of distributing naloxone. There are a bunch of harm reduction organizations across Cumberland County that are doing a lot of overdose prevention work. And I think it's just a little bit easier to reach the populations that are using drugs in Cumberland County than it is in some of the more rural parts of the state.
Okay, my only comment about, I thought your presentation was fine. It was great. But this is like the start of a almost 20-year project, I suppose we could say. You have a coordinator. I just hope that as this develops, we can more fully understand what all these other entities and groups are doing, and obviously you're going to be involved in the management of the larger proportion of funding that's going to that the group you mentioned. It did bother me a little bit to see the range so wide for what was going to be devoted to staff, and I assume that we'll try to manage that to be lower than the largest proportions that were mentioned. And I assume that would also include, as the next few years pass, trying to rationalize everything that's being done so that the delivery is more economical and more effective and more directed. So, yeah, I know you already know that, so I'm just mentioning it. Thanks.
Thank you, for sure. And I'll say that the coordination part, the city of Portland has, they have an overdose prevention project. There are several in the Cumberland County. And they also have a NACHO grant, the National Association for County and City Health Organizations. They have a NACHO grant that then turned into a federal, SAMHSA federal grant to really collect data around overdoses and around the response. I think where we fit in is that their work has primarily had more of a Portland focus, and I think our goal is for our behavioral health public health manager, for whom we are suggesting that half of his salary come from this funding, to really do that part around coordination and expanding the work that's happening that's more centered in Greater Portland, to ensure that we're having a response and collecting data, and we know how and support a more effective response for overdoses and for substance use disorder that's happening in the more rural parts of the county.
I did have one other question. How integrated is this so far, and what are the plans? Healthcare operations, like the hospitals, the whatever the major clinics are in the less outside of Greater Portland.
In terms of healthcare organizations, I would say the healthcare organizations are somewhat involved with the overdose. There's the funded project through the overdose prevention group in Cumberland, the city of Portland is called the Cumberland County Overdose Prevention Alliance, and there are some healthcare organizations that are involved there. There's also another whole group of healthcare providers that is called the Greater Portland Addiction Collaborative that we're also a part of. So there are and there's a prevention collaborative group. I think partly the reason why we wanted to have Brandon do this work is to really pull those pieces together and to be seeing the whole continuum of care. That right now we get funding, everybody gets funding to do their little tiny piece of the pie. And that the idea is that no one is funded. Brandon will be the only person in the entire county that's funded to see the whole picture and to be holding that and be able to do things like coordinate and make things more effective instead of throwing more money at something, saying, wait, somebody's already doing that. So how do we move those things together? So there's certainly, he's been meeting with Bridgeton Hospital, with folks at Maine Health and Mercy as well, to do some of that more connecting and coordinating and connecting to the treatment providers, because there are many treatment providers that are outside of the healthcare organization.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gordon. Oh, Jim, sorry.
I just had a bit of clarification and apology to Liz. Liz and I last week at the tail end did a lot of talk about the range of funding for the three pots, and she revised the memo, and the memo that was put in your packet was not the last memo that, no. So I've beamed it up, here on the board, just so that you can see. We've narrowed down the range so it's not as broad. And we did a lot of talking whether do we do multi-year right out of the gate or do we do single year. And so we felt as though we should be taking baby steps on figuring out what our region needs and not overcommit ourselves right from day one. And so this is our first year range, and so to speak, in terms of funding levels. And we can fine tune it for year 2, for year 3 as we know more and more. But I wanted to at least show you this. The memo was changed, and Liz did put in a revised memo, a first year budget like this. versus what you had in your packets. And I'm sorry, Liz. but
Yeah,
that-
no problem, and I'll say that that salary is like salary benefits and program costs. The intervention and prevention are not for staff salary, those are for, the reason why there's a range actually on interventions is if we put out an RFP, we might receive multiple proposals, and we say we wanna fund a few of them, that we could see that we could have upwards of 90,000 for that, but we might find that there's less right out of the gate that we want to fund, because they may be things that somebody's asking for multi-year that we're not quite ready to commit to. So that's why we've given sort of the range there.
Any other question? Yes, Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah, Liz, thank you. And I really, this is a topic that has got me kind of entranced here. One of the things that I've heard a lot about, and I've, in the work that I've done around the state and talking with other people, especially the sheriffs. Our sheriffs mentioned it a couple of times, many of the others do, is this transitional cost from when an individual gets to leave jail before and try to get into a treatment program. They don't have coverage during that time. And yet, if that person can be helped, then the whole society starts to come forth, and the individual has a much better chance of not coming back into jail. Is this open to them in some manner?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are supporting and, working together with the jail, with the COSAP program, which is really around that reentry support services for folks as they leave jail, to have the way, to have the support that they need to get quickly connected to treatment and recovery services out in the community. So right now, that federal funding supports a reentry specialist in the jail, and then it supports treatment and recovery costs as people are leaving. So we just applied for, you all, approved us to apply for another 5 years of that grant. We haven't heard yet, we keep waiting. I thought on the 31st we would find out, but we'll hear when we hear, I guess. But our assumption is that they like funding that project over and over again. We also have funding from the state to help with recovery residences for folks. So we've been working with Portland Recovery Community Center to provide recovery supports in the form of basically rent for recovery residences that some of the folks at the jail are also eligible for if they aren't getting it through that COSAP project. So again, part of this is yes, we could use these funds for those things. Right now, we have funding for that, that's doing that kind of work. But certainly that would be a conversation that we would want to have. Are there gaps in that? Where do we need to fill those gaps with this funding? Or is there funding things that need to happen out in communities as well?
What I'm really trying to narrow in on is the medical part of it.
So right now, their main care is covering medication for addiction treatment for folks as they leave. We actually, in the COSAP program, we have money that pays for folks to access a few days worth of medication-assisted treatment if they don't get it through main care, and we have not had to use that money because the transition back onto main care has been much faster and has just improved significantly over the last couple of years. It's definitely on Brandon's radar, and I know it's on the radar of folks at the jail around, I know he's in conversation with them of are there gaps, what do we need to fill? And so it's definitely something would be well within the realm of funding, available sources to fund.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Just have
Yes.
a question.
Patty,
Thank you for the presentation. I think, to me, this is the most complicated thing to envision, a 20-year program of so-called retribution for people who have been harmed. Are there, I'm assuming, national forums, because this is not just the main thing, of course, the whole United States is involved with this lawsuit and the funding. Are there other states or counties that we would look to partner with? Maine is different like any other county in West Virginia potentially, but are there national forums, how people are preceding this 20-year time period, how they might use those funds? And do we use those kind of models in other communities, or?
Yeah, great question. Yes, there are a bunch. I actually was hoping to go to a conference, but then I wasn't able to. They ran out of spaces for folks from the states to go to. It was the National Association of State Health Organizations. That was, and they're really a great organization that's keeping track of what everybody's doing
Okay.
with the funds. And because I'm on the Maine Recovery Council, I also get access to a lot of information about what other states, actually that group now being presented to the Recovery Council on what other folks are doing. I think we're taking in all of that information to see what are some of the best uses. I'll also say that our public health system and our system for how we do some of this work is really different than other states. And so what I think we're looking at is, so for example, like in New Hampshire, they have a person like Brandon thinking about the continuum of care in every county. They fund it, it's already done. So they don't need that, right? Like, I think we're looking at what other people have and trying to take that in and say, like, how could we be improving our kind of systems to build up to where, you know, we do have better systems, and that and we're trying to think of it across this, as you said, like we have this 20-year opportunity to not just address the harms, but try to fix a system that then helps folks continuously over that time.
I think that's where the great opportunity lies, honestly, is just not just putting money in places and working with partners, that's all great, but how do we reimagine what our umbrella of care should be to avoid and, really use this money in a forward-looking way. So I'm glad to hear that you have contacts and you're able to access that information. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for the next 20 years. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And our prevention team, because we have prevention funds as well, that team is working together. So we really are covering that continuum and thinking about it that way. So thank you.
Yeah.
Any other further questions or comments for Liz? Liz, thank you very much. Very detailed proposal, but more important, and more importantly, it's going to serve a very valid function for our county for years to come, and we're glad you're at the helm. We need to entertain a motion of support, I think, don't we?
Second. You and I are together tonight. Second.
Yeah, Patty gets a second this time. Moved and seconded. Any questions or further comments? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Matter carries 5-0. The next item on the agenda is the reappointment of the following individuals to the Board of Assessment Review. David Silk, term 7/22 through 6/2025. Jamie Crane, 7/23 to 6/2026. Alex Coop, for a term of January 2021 to June of 2024, and that adds a year to create a staggered term, and Peter Coyne for a term of July 2023 to 6/2026. County Manager, any comments?
No, only that this board hasn't met for about a year and a half, because we've had no appeals. And it was one that kind of escaped us in terms of expiration dates, but we have all reached out to the committee, and they're all still willing to join up when the need arises, and so their names are being brought forward. I'm still trying to track down one additional member, but I was unable to talk to him prior to this meeting, so hopefully we'll be bringing his name forward at a future meeting.
Thank you. We need a motion and a second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I just want to say that I'm very glad that this board exists, and that we used to get dragged into proceedings more often than we would like to admit, and as soon as this board was created, that seemed to end. So I'm very glad to support its continuation.
Mr. Gordon, do you have a comment? No. Call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, nay. Matter carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a confirmation of the Finance Committee appointment. Is that premature?
It's not premature, we just didn't, I don't believe, have anyone come to the caucus for the 4 out of the 5 districts that were open this
Which
evening.
district is full?
Yours, Mr. Commissioner.
Let the record reflect.
Well done.
So we have there's no action item?
No action
because we
item
don't
on
have-
it,
We don't have any bodies, okay, very good. Comments from the county manager?
A few. First is, you may, if you listen to the radio, hear a few radio ads that are out and about. I heard it first time last week. We are running radio ads in the Portland and the Bangor market for the corrections officer and patrol deputies positions.
It's a good ad.
And thank you. A lot of hard work, really spearheaded by Amy and Travis, and working with an outside marketing group to do a lot. I think we learned a lot on how ads were developed and voiceovers and what to say, and you only have 60 seconds, and so a lot went into it. So we think it went well, and we'll see what the first 6 weeks of running the ad looks like, and go from there. General assistance, thank you for approving 4 additional applications this evening. We are now up to 7 towns. And Paige, our social service coordinator, started midweek last week and is really hitting the ground running. I believe she's already handled a couple of cases already for the towns, one in a few towns up in the Lakes region area, and still building the program. It's not as easy as just picking up where the last left off. We have to kind of coordinate and make sure that area agencies and state agencies know that Cumberland County's doing administration of general assistance for towns, and so there's a lot of coordination out there that Paige is handling, and then the meet and greets with the towns and what they want and what they expect for their services. So, good program, and it's paying for itself through the contract, so that's always a good thing. One little thing is the district attorney's office, working with the district attorney over the last week. Her hours of operation have been 8 to 4:30, and with the 4-day work week that we have in place and the revised of schedules, we really run an 8 to 4 shop now. And even though they've advertised that they're open until 4:30, the courts close the front door at 4. So the public can't get to the DA's office even if they want it after 4 o'clock. So if you see anything around a revise of time, that's why. They're just going and mirroring what other offices do for public interface, 8 to 4. Lastly, report out of the Cross Insurance Arena. This past Friday, we had a sold-out show there. The place was packed. Great group. And looking for a busy season. We have another sold-out show in another week and a half when Bill Burr comes to town, a comedian out of Massachusetts. Got one sold-out show. He's doing a second show, and that's almost sold out. This fall, Mariners will kick up in October. UMaine is coming to the arena, one for women's hockey in the afternoon and men's hockey at night, so a doubleheader for UMaine hockey.
Do you have those dates, Jim?
I believe the hockey is December 5th. And we have also, I think for the first time, bringing down UMaine women's basketball. As many of us know, there is Mackenzie Holmes, who is a Gorham resident, and was an all-state basketball player for Gorham High School, who is at Indiana University. Sorry, Amy. Amy's a Purdue fan, so there's a little rivalry there. But UMaine will be playing Indiana, and they thought it would be great to have it right in Mackenzie Holmes' backyard. And so we're expecting a very large crowd when Indiana comes to town. So
What's the date on that one?
I believe it's November 30th.
Oh, coming right up.
Tickets went on sale today. And just a last bit of information, there, the Cross Insurance Arena's operation budget landed in the black for the second straight year. So.
Well done.
That is a positive direction that we've headed in the last 2 years at the arena. So with that, thank you very much. That's all I have to report tonight.
Thank you,
So
Jim.
how many years did it take us to transition
Transition in what way?
from red to black?
Red to black.
Oh, from the COVID, you have to
Oh.
throw in COVID.
10?
Yeah, I would say the last time it was in black was probably 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had the dark years because of the renovation, Pirates leaving. It took some time to get the feet underneath it again.
Still great news. Thank you, Jim. Sheriff Joyce, any comments?
Actually, I'm going to defer to Major Courts.
Very good.
Talk about staff.
Welcome, Major Courts.
Well, just to bring up the speed, I just want to thank Human Resource, our training department, staff is improving. I think we're around 62 vacancies, and there's 4 to 5 that are in the next academy. And then we have a few pre-certified people that don't need the academy that are in the mix also. So things are starting to open up with programming for offenders. One of the specialized positions that we pulled over the summer have reverted back. So things are improving slowly. The end of the month, we have a lot of activity. We have our medical vendor is going to be able to do a pre-audit. We have our medical audit in November for National Correctional Health Care. So they're going to just do a pre-audit walkthrough, and then we'll have the audit in November. Also, the ICE headquarters is doing an audit of our facility on the 26th. We haven't done one since 2011. Reaching out to other facilities that are housing ICE inmates, it's kind of the norm, but we haven't had one done in 10 years. So we'll see how that goes. Programming is opening up. And with the summer, we made it through pretty good under the circumstances with staffing. So things are improving, which affects the morale and the offender climate. So again, I just want to thank you for the support, and hopefully things will keep improving.
Any questions or comments for the Major?
Yeah, out of ignorance, where do we stand with federal prisoners?
I know that the manager and Alex are working with the vendor to get the per diem rate. They sent me down a questionnaire today. We'll have it completed by tomorrow. And we really haven't heard anything since then. That's about it. Like I said, things are improving staff-wise. The numbers look good. Which is
Thank you, Major.
appreciate the help.
Thank you.
And closing the agreement we have with York County, with York County Water, be able to shut down the facility, certain sections, has been beneficial. So
Good.
let's staff, we got
If you don't mind me asking, what's the head count these days?
It is about 235, which is down significantly.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Human Resources, Don and/or Amy? Very good. Catherine? Travis? Commissioners, Commissioner Cloutier?
It's kind of astonishing that we don't have anything out of human resources, and it seems like it's been about 3 years since that was true. Glad to hear it. I don't have anything beyond that.
I don't have anything either.
Commissioner Gordon?
There's the county commissioners convention this week. Whoopee.
Whoopee.
Thank you.
Dates and locations, so
It's at Poland Springs.
Starts tomorrow.
Starts tomorrow.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right?
No, Tuesday,
To
Wednesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Thursday night is the Jensen and
Bear.
Bears
Bear.
seminar.
Very good. Commissioner Smith?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
I'm not going to spoil that run of comments, so I have no comments. We thank you all, and our next meeting is October 11th, 12th?
10th.
10th, Tuesday, correct?
Yes.
Tuesday.
Oh, it's on a Tuesday?
Everyone have a great rest of the month.
Oh, Day of Americans Day?
We stand adjourned. Do I need a motion? I'm sorry. Second? All those in favor? Aye, we are adjourned.
Look, I mean, if you have this.